As part of our continuing coverage of Detroit after the bankruptcy, Detroit Public Television has produced stories on 3 historic Detroit neighborhoods. Today, we take a look at the community that became famous for its specialty stores and thriving commercial corridor. It was known as the Avenue of Fashion.
Particular neighborhoods, they have their own schools that would establish a neighborhood's identity. Shopping districts, stores. A lot of it gets infused with nostalgia as well. So when people think nostalgically about the past, trip down memory lane, they remember the shoe store they used to go to or the tailor they went to.
Detroit, when it was designed, its original footprint was to make neighborhoods almost self-sustaining, almost like towns within towns.
The Avenue of Fashion is as a human scale. It's low scale, small stores. It fits in tightly with the neighborhood around it.
I feel like it used to mean something to be able to shop in your neighborhood and buy things from people that you would know.
I think that it came about because there was this really strong middle and upper middle class neighborhood, Sherwood Forest, and the area on the other side of Livernois. To the east of Livernois was Sherwood Forest, but to the west of Livernois was very solid housing stock. This area was very heavily populated by Jewish population, young Catholic families moving into the University District, into Green Acres. There were people here who had income, and there were surrounding neighborhoods that this was an accessible shopping area for. So they made it into this kind of exclusive area.
It was the place to be. A lot of Detroit's elite and power players, if you will, shopped the area. It was famous for having specialty stores. People like Grinnell's, B. Spiegel's.
I remember, like, maybe not every weekend, but at least every other weekend, just coming down to Spiegel and walking around and looking at the clothes.
It had a defined character, and it did speak exclusivity in some ways. So that if you weren't shopping downtown, where most of us did shop, and you wanted to go a slightly different experience, or the particular kinds of products that were sold in these smaller boutiques and stores, you could come here.
It was one of the first places that Black people had wealth, so we were very conscious of keeping it in the community at that time.
Baker's is just an iconic Detroit institution. I believe one of the oldest, if not the oldest, jazz club in the world, close to almost 100 years on the planet. And it made it very unique because people were able to walk to it. It was a short walk or a short drive.
It was sort of an uncontrolled chain reaction, right? Progress led to progress, development led to development. People saw opportunities, they moved in, they opened up another store, and before you know it, you had this kind of thriving area. Then it came undone. The most popular way is to say in 1954, Northland opened, and it just sucked away all the people to the suburbs. They shopped over here at the Avenue of Fashion and said, oh, the mall opened, we're going to go out to Southfield.
Well, malls made it easier, first with the construction of the highways, and then the malls, like everything's all in one place. And it was shiny and new, so it was exciting to be able to go someplace different than to be in your neighborhood shopping.
The infrastructure issues, the reliance on the automobile, the attraction of suburban malls, all of those things changed people's shopping habits and changed the way in which the neighborhood people interacted with that shopping district.
The question is, how do you build that again? Obviously, it doesn't seem it can do it on its own.
The only way you're going to change something is to invest in it. You can't talk something up. At one point, you got to put your money and your effort and your resources where your thoughts and visions are. And so if you want to change condition of anything, not only Detroit or any other place, you got to dig in and you got to put something in it.
Now there's like this sense of emergency. So looking at all the new development that's happening in the city, people are noticing that a lot of it is happening downtown, in Midtown, in Corktown, and people are like, oh my God, we have to help the neighborhoods.
I guess in some ways you're looking at what's happening at the Avenue of Fashion now, sort of an experiment, a live experiment. That with sufficient attention and care and careful planning, what you're looking for is to create some sustainable development, right? I mean, what will do that?
It starts with family, and what I mean by that is that when families get stronger, neighborhoods get stronger, and communities get stronger. So it's almost starting at the root.
Most of the people that live in this neighborhood have lived here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's not It's not a transient place. It's a place where people have roots. Generations of families live here. They pass the houses down to their children, and the children want to stay in those houses.
Myself and my two nephews has been working for about 3 or 4 years in developing the whole Cuzzo project. And my nephew, getting him to come back home was big for me, and it was big for the family. The goal is to build from 8 Mile to the Lodge and have it take off from there. And then act as a recruiter, recruit other businesses to make it happen faster. And then just simply begin to duplicate this in other parts of the city.
I think it actually has a lot to do with the bigger trend within kind of society, but specifically in the fashion industry, where for a really long time it was fast fashion, it was like trends coming and going, and I feel like people got tired of that and are interested in having a sustainable, not only life and outlook on ways that they can affect their community, but with their style too.
The beauty of Detroit is that Detroit is now being recognized as a designers and artists hotbed. I think the main draw of keeping and attracting young people is to come into nature of them. In other words, the things that they're like, the things that motivate them, things that inspire them. Art, music, creativity, architecture.
The arts are something that you can share between people. So it's not so much consumerism just for the sake of consumerism. It's about those things that can bring people together.
After I graduated, I was like, if I can be where my friends and family are, like the people I love, doing the thing I love in a city that I care about, where I feel like I can make a difference, why would I at least not try to do that? There's definitely room to grow here, and if you do something great, there's people that appreciate it, where you can really make a difference in the city. Whereas in Chicago or New York, which are both great cities and I love them, but this has a different feel to it where you feel like you really make a difference if you want to.
Detroit is a blank canvas, and people feel an energy and a synergy going on. They want to be a part of it. So hanging out in Detroit and hanging out in Chicago is two different feelings. Yeah, you may say, hey, I'm going to enjoy the nightlife in Chicago, but after that's over, at the end of the day, where's the fulfillment in terms of how did you create that environment in Chicago? Well, in Detroit, you got the opportunity to create the next Detroit.
Be sure to tune in on the last Sunday in November for the final installment of the Detroit Neighborhood Series. We want to thank the project's funders, the Michigan Humanities Council and Renaissance Journalism, and a special thanks to our content partners in the Detroit Journalism Cooperative.